An empire is defined as an aggregate of nations or people ruled over by an emperor or other powerful sovereign or government, usually a territory of greater extent than a kingdom, as the former British Empire, French Empire, Spanish Empire, Russian Empire, Byzantine Empire or Roman Empire. An empire can be made solely of contiguous territories such as the Austro-Hungarian Empire, or of territories far remote from the homeland, such as a colonial empire. Aside from the more formal usage, the term empire can also be used to refer to a large-scale business enterprise, a political organization controlled by a single individual or a group. The term empire is associated with other words such as imperialism, colonialism, and globalization. Empire is often used to describe a displeasure to overpowering situations. The effects of imperialism exist throughout the world today. An imperial political structure can be established and maintained in two ways: as a territorial empire of direct conquest and control with force, or as a coercive, hegemonic empire of indirect conquest and control with power. The former method provides greater tribute and direct political control, yet limits further expansion because it absorbs military forces to fixed garrisons. The latter method provides less tribute and indirect control, but avails military forces for further expansion. Territorial empires tend to be contiguous areas. The term, on occasion, has been applied to maritime empires or thalassocracies, with looser structures and more scattered territories. Empires are usually larger than kingdoms. This aspiration to universality resulted in conquest by converting outsiders or inferiors into the colonialized religion. This association of nationality and race became complex and has had a more intense drive for expansion. Definition: an empire is a multi-ethnic or multinational state with political and/or military dominion of populations who are culturally and ethnically distinct from the imperial ethnic group and its culture. This is in contrast to a federation, which is an extensive state voluntarily composed of autonomous states and peoples. An empire is a large political party who rules over territories outside of its original borders. Definitions of what physically and politically constitute an empire vary. It might be a state affecting imperial policies or a particular political structure. Empires are typically formed from diverse ethnic, national, cultural, and religious components. Empire and colonialism are used to refer to relationships between powerful state or society versus a less powerful one. Tom Nen and Paul James define empires as polities that extend relations of power across territorial spaces over which they have no prior or given legal sovereignty, and where, in one or more of the domains of economics, politics, and culture, they gain some measure of extensive hegemony over those spaces for the purpose of extracting or accruing value. Sometimes, an empire is a semantic construction, such as when a ruler assumes the title of emperor. That ruler's nation logically becomes an empire, despite having no additional territory or hegemony. Examples of this form of empire are the Central African Empire, or the Korean Empire proclaimed in 1897 when Korea, far from gaining new territory, was on the verge of being annexed by the Empire of Japan, the last to use the name officially. Among the last of the empires in the 20th century were the Central African Empire, Ethiopia, Vietnam, Manchukuo, the German Empire, and Korea. The terrestrial empire's maritime analogue is the thalassocracy, an empire composed of islands and coasts which are accessible to its terrestrial homeland, such as the Athenian-dominated Delian League. Furthermore, empires can expand by both land and sea. Stephen Howe notes that empires by land can be characterized by expansion over terrain, extending directly outwards from the original frontier, while an empire by sea can be characterized by colonial expansion and empire building, by an increasingly powerful navy. Characteristics: empires originated as different types of states, although they commonly began as powerful monarchies. Ideas about empires changed throughout century, varying from approval from the public to becoming universally distasteful. Empires are built out of separate units with some kind of diversity, ethnic, national, cultural, religious, and imply at least some inequality between the rulers and the ruled. Without this inequality, the system would be seen as commonwealth. Many empires were the result of military conquest, incorporating the vanquished states into a political union. But imperial hegemony can be established in other ways. The Athenian Empire, the Roman Empire, and the British Empire developed at least in part under elective auspices. The Empire of Brazil declared itself an empire after separating from the Portuguese Empire in 1822. France has twice transitioned from being called the French Republic to being called the French Empire, while France remained an overseas empire. Weaker states may seek annexation into the empire. An example is the bequest of Pergamon to the Roman Empire by Attalus III. The unification of Germany as the empire accreted to the Prussian metropole was less a military conquest of the German states than the political divorce from the Austrian Empire. Having convinced the other states of its military prowess, and having excluded the Austrians, Prussia dictated the terms of imperial membership. Politically, it was typical for either a monarchy or an oligarchy, rooted in the original core territory of the empire, to continue to dominate. If governmental authority was maintained by controlling water supplies, vital to colonial subjects, such regimes were called hydraulic empires. Europeans began applying the designation of empire to non-European monarchies, such as the Qing Empire and the Mughal Empire, as well as the Maratha Empire, eventually leading to the looser denotations applicable to any political structure or meeting the criteria of imperium. Some empires styled themselves as having greater size, scope, and power than the territorial, politico-military, and economic facts support. As a consequence, some monarchs assumed the title of emperor, and renamed their states as the Empire of Empires were seen as an expanding power. Administration, ideas and beliefs followed by cultural habits from place to place. Empires tend to impose their culture on the subject states to strengthen the imperial structure. This can have notable effects that outlast the empire itself, both positive and negative.